Hey, it's Kappy, and this is Beyond the Plate Heard, the audio newsletter where I share what's on my plate literally and figuratively. From culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, it's everything that I'm seeing, tasting, and talking about in just a few minutes. It's not a peer-reviewed culinary journal, it's just my take on what I'm into at the moment. So let's dive in, and I hope you all take something from my plate. First up is Kuklas Greek Eatery. Kuklas is a modern-style Greek restaurant, and it's in Niles, Illinois. Niles is about 15 miles northwest of downtown Chicago, and it's from the Banos father-son duo, more specifically Jimmy Banos Jr. A lot of people probably know the Banos family from the Purple Pig in Chicago, which they're no longer involved with, and Kuklas is their newest restaurant. I ended up here on a completely random Friday night and grabbed a seat at the bar and ordered a handful of their smaller plates. Honestly, every dish was really good. My favorite was this grilled carrot salad with arugula, Greek figs, avocado, and grilled halloumi cheese. So delicious. But I also had this newer dish that was on the menu, which was a Greek meatball. I think it was part lamb, part beef. And it had this avgolemino inspired sauce, which, if you know, is that Greek creamy lemon soup. And then the meatballs had this toasted orzo crumb on top, which was fantastic. And then I had my eye on the dessert. They did have a rice pudding creme brulee, which I need to go back for because it sounds incredible. But I wound up getting the Greek frozen yogurt, which was also really good. They put some olive oil and sea salt on top. Simple, but really delicious. So if you live in the Chicagoland area, I definitely think it's worth checking out. If you're visiting Chicago from another state, I don't know that I'd tell you to drive across the city just for this, but if you happen to be anywhere near the north or northwest suburbs, it's absolutely worth the detour. The funny thing is, I barely scratched the surface of the menu, I feel like. They have a lot of larger format plates that looked really good, and then they had about 5 or so pasta dishes that looked incredible. So I will definitely be heading back with more people next time. You can find all the links and handles I mentioned in the show notes. Next up is Side Project Jerky. Side Project Jerky is a small batch beef jerky company that started exactly how it sounds, as someone's side project. That grew into a business built around chef-crafted creative flavors. So I first came across Side Project Jerky, I think it was over 10 years ago, when I was spending a lot more time for my work in the Philadelphia area. One of my favorite chefs turned coffee roasters is John Adams, and from Rival Brothers Coffee. I've talked about him on this podcast before, but Johnny had collaborated with them on a jerky flavor in the past, and I still remember it being like an incredibly good jerky. So over the years, I've tried a bunch of their flavors, but honestly, I kind of forgot about them until they popped back up in my Instagram feed recently. I saw that they were doing a Philly cheesesteak flavor, which I was kind of curious about, and it caught my attention clearly. So I ordered a couple bags of it, and it was really, really good. It has all those savory notes that you'd expect from a cheesesteak. And then the cheesy flavor comes from a cheddar cheese powder that they use, which really works. So if a cheesesteak flavored jerky sounds like it might be your thing, it definitely would give it a try. And if it doesn't sound like your thing, don't let that stop you from trying Side Project. They've always done a really great job at coming up with creative flavors that are worth eating. Next up is a recipe for banana bread. I know everyone has a banana bread recipe, but hear me out. So this is actually a little 2-for-1 because the recipe comes from another podcast that I do called Clean Play Club. Clean Play Club is a podcast for kids and grown-ups that gets families excited about cooking. It's more for kids than grown-ups, but grown-ups seem to love it too. Anyway, we like to describe it as story time, but with recipes. So essentially, we read recipes from chefs, celebrities, and other great home cooks to my 7-year-old twins. And it's really all about getting kids excited about food and cooking and involved in the kitchen. And then my twins ask me questions about the ingredients or a cooking technique. So this particular recipe that I'm sharing comes from Nicole Ryan. Nicole is the host of the Morning Mashup on Sirius XM Hits 1. She sent us her old-fashioned banana chocolate chip bread recipe, and my twins and I made it when we first received this. And I remember thinking it was one of the best banana bread recipes we'd ever made. So recently, I had a few bananas getting a little too brown on the counter, so we made it again. We put chocolate chips in some of it. We put butterscotch chips in some, and some with Heath toffee bits. It actually doubled the recipe just so we could play around with a few different versions. Chocolate chip still wins though. So if you've been looking for an excuse to use up some overripe bananas, give this one a try. And if you want the recipe or want to learn more about Clean Plate Club, and here's some more recipes, head over to @CleanPlateClubPod on Instagram. Next up is Project Feed the Kids. Okay, Project Feed the Kids is a nonprofit in Traverse City, Michigan that's fighting food insecurity through a network of publicly accessible community refrigerators and coolers that are stocked with free food. To be honest, I don't even remember where I first heard about this organization, but it was a recent find and one that immediately stuck with me. Their coolers are available 24/7, and the concept could not be simpler. If you're hungry, pull up, take what you need, and leave the rest for someone else. No questions asked, no qualifications, just food for people who need it. The organization actually started during the pandemic after its founders saw kids receiving school meals during the week and wondered who was feeding them on the weekends. So what began with about 81 meals has grown into thousands of meals every weekend. So a big shout out to Project Feed the Kids, because I'm always inspired by people who see a need in their community and simply decide to do something about it. Next up is the podcast Always Hangry with George Duran. Always Hangry is a new food podcast built around a simple idea. Food isn't complicated. People make it complicated. I first came across George more than 20 years ago, I believe, when he hosted a show on Food Network called Ham on the Street. I always loved his creativity, his wit, and his sense of humor. Funny enough, I even ended up on one of his episodes years ago when I randomly walked by while he was filming in Miami. George and I have stayed in touch over the years, and when I took my first trip to Paris a long time ago, he actually sent me restaurant recommendations because he had lived there and hosted a food show there. Believe it or not, I still share that list with friends more than 20 years later. Anyhow, I recently ran into George at a food show, and he told me he was thinking about starting a podcast. So apparently I share a little bit of the blame for encouraging him to do it. And I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, but I've now listened to the first few episodes, and it is quickly becoming one of those podcasts for me where you immediately want the next one. George is incredibly knowledgeable. He's genuinely curious, and he has this way of packing so much into every conversation without making it feel overwhelming. There were a few moments where I caught myself thinking like, wow, I just learned 10 things in the last 5 minutes. So if you're looking for a new podcast for your next road trip, or honestly, just your next drive or walk, check out Always Hangry. I think you'll really enjoy it. So nice work, George, and keep those episodes coming. I will share links and handles in the show notes. Next up is an Instagram series called From the Pantry with Chef Erling Wubauer. Erling is the chef owner of Maxwell's Trading, a fantastic restaurant in Chicago. And From the Pantry is a short video series on Instagram where he stands in the pantry of his restaurant and shares chef-inspired tips that make home cooking easier and more flavorful. He's only a handful of episodes in. I think he's done about 5 or so, but I'm kind of hooked. It showed up on my feed and I was in. The whole idea is helping you build a better pantry so you can cook really good food without overthinking it. One of my favorite episodes was all about his pantry cheat codes. I think that was a recent one where he focuses on these different seasoning blends that he always keeps on hand. I was super excited to hear that he's a fellow Lowry's seasoned salt fan because honestly, that stuff tastes like my childhood. I sprinkled it on every burger that I grilled as a kid. He's also done great episodes on olive oil, soy sauce, and a few other pantry staples. So I always say that if I'm going to follow someone online, I want to actually learn something and build trust in what they're sharing. I don't really think of Erling as an influencer. I think of him as an incredibly talented chef who's sharing what he knows, and there's value in that. So if you're looking for a few simple ways to level up your pantry and your cooking, definitely give From the Pantry a watch. One last thing before I leave you. So I've received 2 different texts recently, actually more than 2 now. One about a restaurant closing and the other about how expensive restaurants have become. Now, I'm going to try not to be too preachy, but to me, these 2 conversations kind of go hand in hand. My response was pretty simple. Nothing's cheap these days. Food costs are up, labor costs are up, and restaurants are working harder than ever just to make the numbers work. And one of the hardest parts isn't even that the ingredients are expensive, it's that sometimes chefs don't even know what those ingredients may cost next week, especially in like the produce space. The restaurant business has never been easy, everybody, but it genuinely feels harder than ever for so many of my friends and colleagues in hospitality. So I'm just going to leave you with this. If you're going to spend money going out to eat, yes, it's pretty refreshing when the meal is actually worth it. And that's what we expect. For me, I'd rather pay a couple more dollars for a restaurant that's buying quality ingredients, that's taking care of its staff, and that's trying to create a great experience than saving a few bucks and leaving disappointed. So shout out to everyone in hospitality who's still showing up every day and working their butt off. And one more last thing. Tales of the Cocktail recently wrapped up in New Orleans. So congratulations to all of this year's Spirited Awards winners. I was really excited to see that 4 of the winners have been guests on our Beyond the Drink podcast series. And one more shout out to my friend David Semenoff, better known to many as Semi. He's a very hardworking hospitality PR pro and a true champion for his clients. It was really fun seeing so many of the bartenders and bars that he represents recognized on one of the industry's biggest stages. Nice work, Semi, and congrats to everyone. Thanks for listening to Heard, a production of Beyond the Plate. You can find all the links and handles I mentioned in the show notes. If you liked this, then tap the follow button and tune in for more Heard, where I share what I'm seeing, tasting, and loving lately in food and hospitality. And if your friends and family may enjoy it, I hope you'll share it with them. Until next time.